Welcome to our latest podcast. We're very happy to have Bob Seiner with us. Bob is a legend in the data governance community, has written many books and articles, and has run his own consulting firm for many years. Bob is keen to get us back on the front foot with data governance. He's talking about new ways of thinking, new ways of educating people, new ways of kind of getting work done in AI, and very much looking forward to speaking to Bob about those things. Right, so welcome to Nicola's Data Governance Podcast. It's just myself today hosting, and we're delighted to have the legend that is Bob Seiner with us. Legend is a massively overused term, but I think in Bob's case, it's perfectly appropriate. I've got lots to talk about Bob today. Got some really interesting topics we're going to cover, but before we start, I'm just going to get Bob to introduce himself because he's going to do a far better job than I am. Bob, welcome to the podcast.
Okay, I'll try to keep it quick. All right, so my name is Bob Seiner. I'm the president and principal of KIK Consulting and Educational Services. Look me up at kikconsulting.com. KIK stands for Knowledge is King. It's not my initials. My initials are BS. I didn't want to call myself BS Consulting. Also, on the side, I am a faculty member at Carnegie Mellon University in the Chief Data and AI Officer program here in my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
It's a heck of a CV, Rob, and I've certainly got introduced to you through your original books, the original non-invasive data governance books, which I really enjoyed and I've recommended to our customers. And, you know, there's many things I enjoy about those books. One is because they're really short, and secondly is that they've got lots of practical advice in it. So I think we should start there, really. I mean, I know that you talk a lot in your books about kind of persistence, keep going, all of that stuff. You know, kind of where does that come from? Where did you start with that? And when you talk about non-invasive, what's your definition of that?
Okay, so it's interesting. When I was back in the corporate world years ago, and I was introduced to the subject of stewardship, and governance wasn't even really being used at the time, I decided that this thing called stewardship, we needed to get people to be accountable for the data. So the idea of non-invasive came along when we just looked at the in the corporate world, we looked at the relationships people had to data. There were people that were defining data, producing data, using data. And we figured that if we could just make them formally accountable for the things that they're informally accountable, it's not going to be invasive. It's not going to be threatening. It's not going to feel like we're giving them things that they don't already have. So it wasn't until I left the corporate world where we were calling them de facto data stewards in the corporate world. These were people that were stewarding when they may not even have recognized that they were stewarding. And we formalized their relationships to the data, and we didn't go around hitting them over the head with a club and telling them that they needed to do all these different things. We wanted to focus first on the idea that they were already governing, and we could formalize that in a non-invasive way rather than coming across as assigning them new responsibilities, you know, giving them things they didn't already have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, because the first response of people is you're giving us more work, and our view is we're legitimizing what you do, giving it more value, and hopefully if you do more of it, you'll get less of the ad hoc stuff out there.
It's even just comes down to a few words. I mean, you can assign somebody to be a data steward, and immediately whenever I get assigned anything, I feel like it's over and above what I already have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
or you could just identify somebody as a steward. That's kind of passive. That doesn't really do anything either. But if you recognize them, that key word is recognize them. Yeah. It has a positive connotation that goes along with it. And recognizing it, I think you said it very well, that we're kind of formalizing things that they already do and giving them credit for things, but at the same time, helping them to do them in a more consistent manner.
Yeah, and we talk about this idea that there's a hump. You're going to have to do some things to almost legitimize and bring into the open what you're doing, and it's going to take more, but then it's going to get better. But one of the things that we find, and I know again from reading your stuff, and I mean I feel the same way, but the overwhelming narrative, and maybe there's been a change, has been that data governance is failing. I wrote an article years ago saying, data governance has an image problem, and you do kind of hear it. And I know LinkedIn's got a lot of nonsense on it, but we need to reinvent ourselves. It's broken. Nobody's taking it seriously. I know you've got a more positive view on that, Bob, and I think that would be something I'd be, if you could share that with us, that'd be great.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of the listeners and the viewers of this podcast probably know John Ladley. He's another big name in the data governance space. John and I issued a statement back in April of 2025 that we wanted to change the narrative around data governance, but exactly for the reason you just mentioned. Everybody was saying data governance is failing. And we say, no, data governance isn't failing. It's just misunderstood. People don't realize, executives think that data governance is something that is new. People have to realize that your company, your organization wouldn't have been around for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 150 years if there had been a complete lack of governance. There are already people in your organization that are governing. There's people that have accountability for defining data, for producing data, for using data. If we can just take that and we can formalize things that already exist, data governance can't fail. I think I wrote an article a couple of years ago that it's not possible for data governance to fail. It can just be done poorly. It could be done informally. Governance is taking place. And if I can, just in like 10 seconds, 30 seconds here, I want to explain. I give presentations at conferences quite a bit. And I used to start the presentation by asking the question, okay, by show of hands, how many of your organizations are governing your data? And only a few hands would go up. Nobody was like waving their hands saying, yeah, we're governing our data. And I'd say, okay, put your hands down. I'm going to ask that question again. How many of your organizations are governing your data? And I want everybody to raise their hand. And so I do that, and people look at me kind of cockeyed, and they say, okay, Bob's asking us to raise our hand. I said, look around. Everybody has their hand raised. The fact is, you are governing your data. You're just doing it informally. Mm-hmm. There are rules around how you can use the data. The question is, are people following those rules?
Yeah.
Do they know the rules? People are producing data. I heard in the United States, at least, there were more people born on January 1st, 2001 than any other date, because it's a default date and people just accept it. So if people are held accountable for how they produce data, we're just asking them to do things that are already in their job descriptions.
Yeah.
And it's not as scary if you think of it that way.
Yeah, there is. And, we say to people that, people say, I don't do data. It's like, well, you do email. Like, we always talk about there needs to be a contract where you're being supported to be good with data, like you would be with finance and people and other assets. And then you've got some responsibilities as you would around those other assets. But it is difficult. People often think it's a technical discipline, especially I think AI has been a bit of a double-edged sword there. And also sometimes I will go and speak to kind of senior leadership in UK universities, and just trying to get them to understand that this stuff's really important. It aligns with what they care about, but it is difficult sometimes. I don't think when people say what's data governance for, it's a bit like you've got to know your audience, don't you? You've got to know what's important to them, because it's not about reading the Dharma book, is it? It's not about the practice and the procedures. It's about what does it mean to me? What are my risks? What are my opportunities? Is that the way you see it?
Well, a good friend of mine came to me years ago and said, we shouldn't call this data governance. He said, we should call this people governance, because it's getting people to do the appropriate thing. Yeah. So it's really not a technical skill. And as we go through this podcast, and we get a chance to talk about some of the things that are interesting me now, the idea of data governance without people changing their behavior, data governance is going to fail if you don't get people to change their behavior. So I started to incorporate formal change management. And I'm talking about corporate change management, not data change management. Getting people to change their behaviors, getting them to look at becoming a steward, not as being something that's over and above what they're presently doing. It's just part of their job. It's embedded in the things that they presently do. So the whole idea of data governance is really all about the human aspect of it, is changing people's behavior. And that's really one of the things that I wrote about in the new book, is just about how we need to focus on getting people to understand their role, but then participate actively in their role.
I think we should explore that. I mean, certainly, my most overused comments are, data is a people business, and we all we need to do is make the right thing the easy thing. That's for me how you drive behaviors, not to beat people up or say read the policy. But I think the other thing that we say is that, change happens when change happens. So this kind of idea that it's part of transformation. You start a project, and again, we fall back on the asset thing, and we'll say, you think about how much money it costs to start a project, how many people you need, but why don't we do what data you need? So what's your kind of narrative now? I mean, obviously you've got the book out, which is great, which I haven't had time to read yet, but I will read it a year definitely. Is what kind of things are you talking to people now, and what kind of response are you getting? Are you getting a positive response to this?
I am. In fact, what's interesting is, we've gone, I don't know how many minutes so far, and we haven't used the term AI yet.
No.
AI is.
I was saving that. But let's do it.
AI is changing a lot of things, though, and so AI doesn't really care where it gets its data from. It's not just getting data from your information systems. So data governance has always been viewed kind of as a technical skill around the technical governance of data in systems. But as we start to open our eyes more towards AI could use structured data, unstructured data, semi-structured data, records management, content management, document management. All those things are disciplines that have been around a lot longer than data governance. They've been governing unstructured data for years. So now what we need to do is kind of incorporate this whole concept of information governance with data governance. The industry seems to have defined information governance as the governance of unstructured data. Well, now with AI not caring where it gets its data from, we need to kind of converge the concept of getting people to govern their data appropriately to getting people to govern every type of information or data asset appropriately.
I think that's really interesting, because we did this with enterprise architecture. We've kind of carved up the world. We've talked about records management and information governance and data governance and data, and like nobody cares but us. And I think it is interesting. I mean, I suppose it's almost like you want to turn the question around. It's like, what do you need the data to do? And we'll build the thing to allow it to do that. Is that a better conversation to be having with people, do you think?
I think if you do project specific, or if you do output specific governance, if you're going to do it that way, I think you need to keep your eyes open to everything else that's around you as well. So you don't do it just focused on a specific output. No. So when you focus on, well, you and I are old enough to know the BI craze, the business intelligence and data warehousing. I mean, they're still around, but people started putting governance programs in place specifically around their data warehouse. So there was BI governance was formed. And then there was what's interesting is I talk about metadata governance. Metadata is just another type of data. And you know what? Somebody has to define what metadata is necessary. Somebody has to produce that metadata or make sure it's produced. And then obviously we expect people to use that. We could post the term of governance on almost any discipline at all at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that we just need to look at it as being something that is foundational, that is built into people's behavior, that is built into their accountability, without making them feel like we are threatening them.
Do you think the other half of that, and this is something that, this is just going wildly off topic now, Bob, but is we think people don't, you come into an organization, especially in the UK, and you might, if you become a budget holder, you go to the finance office, they teach you how to look after a budget. If you become a team leader, If I come in with skills, there's something on my resume that might say I know I'm good at Excel or I've got some other skills, but nobody says here are the data skills you need for your job, Alex, and here's how we're going to support you. So I wonder if some of this why people are reticent to take on what they think is additional responsibilities, because we're not explicitly valuing that when we're bringing people into the organization, when we're looking to develop them. Is that something you see in the US? Is that a prevalent thing, or is that kind of a UK thing?
I haven't noticed a difference in the UK and the US at this point in time. I think that data needs to be at the very beginning of somebody's job, needs to be a very big part of them learning their job. They need to know what information assets are available to them. They need to know what their role is in those information assets, if they're using them, if they're defining them, if they're producing them, and those types of things. So I think there is a gap that needs to be filled. When people are brought into an organization, data may be a part of it. They may be given a 30-minute session on information security, and then take a test, and they're done. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a gap that needs to be filled. And I'm so happy to see Nicola and other people and yourself, filling that gap. People need to understand that this is part of what they do already. And it's only going to help them in their career if they do better, if they show an interest in learning more about it.
Yeah, I think, these are very transferable skills as well. I think this is something, as an individual, if you're looking to develop in or outside a company, they're really helpful. I mean, it is funny, the sound joke we have here is, how good you are with data, especially if you're new to a role, is who you sit next to. Put 99 in there. We've always got time to do it twice. We've not got time to do it right. And so I think this thing about it being a people business, we should just come back to again briefly. I think we always say technology is not going to save you. I mean, technology is incredibly important, but if you don't get the people bit right, I just, I see these data strategies and I just think that's an investment case for an enterprise service bus. That's not a data strategy. I mean, I find that, I don't know about you, but I just find that so frustrating that we don't want to tackle the root causes we've been talking about today. Do you feel the same way? Or
I do. I think that, but I see it changing. I see the technology is always going to be there, but the technology is not the solution, not the solution. Now, granted, you're going to do a better job of governing your data if you have information about that data, if you have metadata, if it's available to you when you need it, if it's written in such a way that it's going to add value to you. And the data catalogs and those types of tools are very important to help to provide that information. But they are not going to change your behavior. They are not going to assure that you're using the data properly. So I think that it needs to be part of the overall equation for a good employee, is that they understand that they are a steward of the data from day one. If you look it up in the dictionary, in the Oxford Dictionary, the definition of what a steward is, it is somebody who takes care of something for somebody else. That is literally, at least that's one of the definitions that I've seen.
Great definition.
So a steward is somebody, so when you become an employee of an organization, you're immediately a steward. It's not something that you can opt into or opt out of just by the mere fact that you have a relationship to the data. If you're being held accountable for that relationship, you're a steward of the data. I don't know of anybody back in the corporate world or any of the clients that I work with who doesn't have a relationship to the data somehow, some way. So I've been known to say, everybody is a data steward. Get over it, because everybody has a relationship to the data. And if we start from day one educating people that way, that they're a steward, I think we're going to be a lot better. Data governance won't be failing the way people are talking about it now.
And I think we unleash data superpower, which is that we can have utility. We can only spend the budget once or allocate the person to one lecture, but data, we can use it over and over again if we create trust in it. And that's all about kind of people saying, I understand the data I'm looking at is not mine. I am, as you say, looking after it for myself and for other people. So Yeah, I mean, I think it's always good to hear. I sometimes think that it's like it's sometimes you're a lonely voice. You kind of tell people this stuff, and they go, "Oh, it's just too hard," or it's I think it's already priced in, this bad data and everything else. So, I mean, what's your kind of if you've written lots of books, lots of articles, but if I had to put you on the spot and distill it down, and it doesn't need to be a sentence, but if somebody was starting out in data governance, they were trying to get on and they were kind of meet some of the resistance we've talked about, what's the kind of piece of advice that you're going to offer them? What you're going to put their arm on their shoulder? What are you going to tell them to make them kind of persist and carry on, do you think? What is that thing?
I would start with one line. Okay. I would say that they need to recognize that governance is already taking place.
Yeah.
Okay. So they need to formalize it. They might need to make some changes to the way governance is taking place, but they need to formalize it. And then the next thing that I think they need to do is kind of reposition what governance is. People think of governance as being something that's going to stand in the way of success.
Yeah.
If they reframe that to becoming a catalyst, becoming something that's going to spark things to happen in the organization, to accelerate AI success, accelerate analytics success, because people are working better with the data. Let's make data governance that spark instead of just being something that is viewed in a negative way. I think that would be where I would start, is get people to realize that governance is already taking place in your organization and you can formalize it rather than starting from scratch.
Yeah, and don't be an apologist for it. Don't, but kind of have that attitude, which is, we always talk about, unaccelerate, unblock, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, exactly right. It's happening. We can make it better. The organization needs it. Come on, we just need more people like us and less people like them. I think there's that, so I'm enthused by this conversation. I've been having a day, Bob, where I've had a lot of people asking me again the value of what we do, and this conversation is very helpful. Just give us a quick synopsis, because I haven't had a chance to look at what's the latest book.
So the latest book is called The Data Catalyst Cubed. So that whole concept of using data as that spark or that accelerant is important. And the number Q in the cubed, the exponential number 3 next to the data catalyst cubed, is data governance accelerated by formal change management. We talked about behavior change, and then accelerated again by formal data fluency. It's data literacy, but getting people to feel more confident in the data. So I think that's the data catalyst cubed, accelerating data governance with change management and data fluency. And I think it makes sense. Everything we've talked about today kind of is all about people and their behavior. I think that's people may be interested in what's in the book.
Well, I'm certainly going to read it, Bob, and I'm going to say I'm going to find a lot to agree with. But as ever, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been great. We'll do another one. We talked about this. We'll do another change management one. I think we should delve into that in the next series. But for today, thank you very much for your time, and yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Well, that was great, Bob. Thanks very much. Yes, definitely looking forward to having you back again to discuss some of that in more detail. I do suggest you go and check out Bob's new book. It's excellent. And we're very grateful for having him on the podcast.